I want to apologize if this is a little bit rambly, but I wanted to heard a recent podcast where they asked the question, why postmodernism now? Why the SJWs? Why is the left so much in sway, so much in favor, so much in power, so much pushing their things that seems to be more like, recently than any other time. And I think there are a few good reasons why, but in thinking about the discussion, I thought about more about the terms in left and right, because that's where you get a little bit more of the distinctions between the two. If you think of the left as more feminine and the right as more masculine, kind of in mythological, in our traditional history, it might explain some of the things that we see the left so fixated on at this time, and sometimes the right as well, although the left is the problem right now. So the left seems to be infatuated with the zero-sum game. And this is where one person can only benefit at the expense of someone else. There is no such thing as someone benefiting without causing harm, or even the best case scenario of someone can benefit and the other person can benefit as well. And I don't understand this because in a lot of our human endeavors, particularly in the modern Western society, it's not a zero-sum game. Both parties stand to benefit. You can freely engage where you purchase, what companies that you choose to do business with. You may be just an individual, but that is what you're doing. You're engaging in business with companies when you go into Nike or Adidas or Starbucks or the mom and pop store down the corner. Amazon, any of these, even online retailers, you are engaging in business with these companies, and you both stand to benefit because in our free society where you can choose to walk away, they actually do have to give you something of value. Otherwise, you don't have to do it. You don't have to engage in that business. So I don't think it's fair to say that all transactions have to come at the expense of another person and the benefit of another. And this got me thinking more about the feminine terms of this, where they think about this. And I don't know if this is true, and I would appreciate some feedback if anyone has any more information on this. But one thing that we do know very well is that women tend to like attention. Well, attention kind of is a zero-sum game to some degree, because only one person can command the attention of the room or the person that they're engaged with, right? If you're having a conversation with someone and that person is on their phone, you don't have their attention. They're sitting there scrolling. Or if they're looking at other people in the room, not really listening to what you're saying. So in that case, that is a zero-sum game. And maybe to some people's minds, it always does come at the expense, but only when you're thinking in that very narrow term, because certainly there are some situations where you only can benefit at someone else's expense, if you want to view it that way. Personally, I like a conversation where, it goes back and forth, or even in a room, or if you're looking at the attention as a zero-sum game, it's like, well, why do you want the attention? Like, there's so much more to that than, like, why do you want the attention? What's pushing you for that attention? Like, say someone else in the room doesn't feel the need for the attention. Well, then it's not a zero-sum game. They don't even want the attention anyway, so you're kind of fighting over nothing. So I think that might in part explain this zero-sum game fascination. Something else that is very curious to me is their idea of safe spaces. The people that need safe spaces are the people that are hospitalized in a mental facility, very young children. You have to baby-proof your house, so they don't play with the electrical sockets. Disabled people. Sometimes disabled people do need a safe space so that they can move around where they may not be in full control of their body and or their mental faculties, such as someone that may go into a seizure or something like that. It would make sense that certain precautions would be taken if it's severe enough to make the space literally safe then. And of course, elderly people that may be dealing with dementia, also certain physical problems. Like sometimes it's very hard for elderly people to use stairs, so they may want a house, on a single floor. Okay, those are the types of people that need safe spaces, not teenagers, older teenagers, not adults in their 20s and 30s and 40s that are able-bodied and of sound mind. If you're calling for a safe space, you are saying, if the safe space is for yourself, I am mentally and or physically incapable of dealing with the world. And I need a space that is protected because of my deficiencies. Because if the world was actually not safe for you, why would you ask the world, which is the unsafe space, which is causing the unsafeness, not you, then to make a safe space? It doesn't make sense. It's like asking somebody that breaks into your house to kill you, will you now please protect me from being killed? No, that is the problem. So if the problem's not you and the problem is outside of you, you are appealing to the outside of you to protect you from itself. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense. The problem is with you, and you need the safe space because everyone else is operating in this environment. So you are the one that needs this special protection because you fall under one of these categories, which seems very bizarre to me. And if you're calling for safe spaces for other people, then you are saying that they are mentally and or physically incapable of dealing with the world, as you would with someone that needs hospitalization or mental facility, children, the elderly. And that strikes me as bizarre that they've never just sat there and thought about what they're actually asking for. Because they are declaring to the world their own incompetence, their own inability to function. And they do not need to be. You are specifically saying, well, just as you would not let a child get behind the wheel of a car, you would not give a child a gun either. And someone that was impaired mentally, these are also situations you would avoid. Putting them in elderly, that sort of thing, right? Given the, whatever their particular difficulty is. So they're literally telling the world that they are incompetent and that they should not be allowed the freedom that everyone else enjoys. That is exactly what they're asking for when they ask for a safe space. And it does. You notice the categories too that I mentioned. These are all categories of where we would, clearly recognize, yes, children need a safe environment. You cannot have the same home that you had when you're living by yourself, and then when you have a young child, something has to change a little bit. Those homes are not the same for the same people, and it does need to be a safe space, so to speak. So that is more of a maternal instinct, I do believe, more from the maternal side, more from the feminine. And that's perhaps why you see them asking for that. And maybe in some ways they do view themselves as incompetent, and maybe that's why they're so angry. Because they are incapable of dealing with the world. So they do realize in some fundamental level that they don't need the responsibility. They actually do not want the responsibility that comes with being a full, adult. Something else that I've often heard people say is that women want to see. They want to see people do things, people like themselves, in positions of power, do all sorts of things so that then they can go forward and do it. Because that's what's preventing women from taking positions of power and wanting to seek executive levels of power and stuff like that. And that seems very bizarre to me, and that's also another very feminine thing that the left pushes. You need to see, minority groups in these positions of power. And it's like, okay, but how did we get here? How did we get in this current society that we are at? If you need to see someone do something, then nothing new ever gets made. Because you have to be the first one, and there's probably a lot of failures before the first success in anything. How many people tried to fly and failed before the Wright brothers succeeded? And I don't see how, that does seem to be, we do know that women tend to be risk adverse due to their childbearing years and the importance of their fertility. It makes sense from our hunter-gatherer days, and that they would, the women that did not take on as much risk, would be more successful in breeding, having children, and that would lead to more women, of course, being risk averse. Certainly not all. There always are exceptions to this, but just generally speaking. And of course, men tend to be the risk takers. They tend to be the forgers, the pioneers, because when you are actually being truly creative and innovative, you are the first. You are the first one doing this. and there is no roadmap for it. Of course, something that we must always remember from the Chinese yin and yang, it does show that there is, even in the feminine, there is a little bit of masculine, and in the masculine there is some feminine. And so it's not like it's 100%. Just because you're born a man doesn't mean you're 100% masculine in all aspects in every way. There is some of the feminine and vice versa as well. And I think that pertains a little bit, that sort of thing, into our question of why postmodernism now. Because certainly we do have the technology that allows the spread of information quicker. Lies always spread faster than the truth. Truth takes time to get and then to learn it. It's certainly a slower process than a lie, is instantaneous and can go everywhere with our instant communication nowadays. Certainly a lot of people feel dissatisfied right now. I think that can be due to economic reasons, but perhaps other reasons as well in the environment. And of course, the dissatisfaction, feeling that, doesn't have to correspond to reality. You can feel dissatisfied even though you have every luxury around you. So that's also not something that we can necessarily empirically deal with. It's just a feeling. Religion has been discredited, which is what formerly gave people's meaning to their life. Myth, religion, that sort of thing. And since it's been destroyed, there is now a hole. And that hole is trying to be filled by weird stuff nowadays, such as environmentalism, veganism, feminism, atheism, scientism. All those sorts of things are trying to fill that gap. And they aren't doing a very good job because the people cannot seem to lead productive lives. That's not 100% necessarily. Certainly some of them are more destructive than others, but they do find that they are lacking in perhaps the things that religion did for us that we took for granted because it was just doing them. We looked at all the bad things that came along with that and pointed those out and said, well, we need to ditch it. So we ditched it, and then now we realize the things that it was doing good, along with the things that was negative. We really need those things. They were really important, and perhaps that's why we took the bargain of accepting the negative with the good a long time ago, evolutionary speaking. And now that we don't have those, things are beginning to fall apart, along with obviously not one thing, not religion itself is doing that, but many other things as well. So right now we have no clear path forward. We don't know how to navigate this environment, and because of that, you have lots of people saying they do know how to navigate forward. And the problem with that is that I honestly don't think anyone on this planet actually knows what to do right now to move humanity forward in a positive way. No one has the plan. Not feminism, not veganism. None of the new things do. And the old things, while they could perhaps have stabilized society before our technological innovations, they no longer can do it in the same way. And they, to function, also would need an upgrade. So you can't just revert to a religion of the, 17th century, so to speak, and expect that to function nowadays with our current technology and everything that has happened. You would have to take everything back literally. And of course, we're not going to do that. We're not going to get rid of our phones. We're not going to get rid of our internet. We're not going to get rid of many of the things in our lives that make it so much easier. And I think it would be ridiculous. So we do need to update. No one knows the exact path forward. But we do know probably one thing that we need to do. We do need to talk about it. And I think in part, that's why you have so many people wanting to shut down discussion. Because if we're really honest with ourselves, no one on the right, nor no one on the left has the answers. Not right now. We're not smart enough. No one is. We're still figuring everything out because, the environment has changed. Our environment has changed, and if we don't talk about it, there is no way forward except for problems. Because you're going to have all these charlatans saying they do know the way. Just like in the religion, you always had these crazy nutcases saying, oh, the world's going to end. I never understood those guys because they always would say it was pretty soon. That's how you had to know that they were deluded. Because they didn't stick it like 20 or 30 years off for the most part. At least the ones I've read about, it was always like a month or two away, or a week away, or something like that, and or a year away. And then they, I don't know, but they really thought they were on to something. So I guess they believed their own lies and really got deluded. And I think that's what you see also a lot on the left right now, believing their own lies and getting deluded. And I do say another thing overall that might help this right now is the reason that you see, one reason among many that you see the left attempting, certainly was in ascendancy. I think that's questionable now, but if the left is of the feminine, that represents chaos. And if the right is of the masculine, that represents order. And I think something that's very important to remember, even though none of us will probably like this fact, is that order must be above chaos. Because if you have chaos above order, then you have a big mess. It's too much. Now, certainly there is also somewhat of a, it's never like 75% order, 25% chaos. Because, the world, the environment, hurricanes, earthquakes will increase that chaos level. And we don't always want to push for maximum order as well, I don't think, because that turns into authoritarianism. It turns into a totalitarian, regime. Everybody giving specific, orders, specific rules for every single aspect, which even if they work, they won't work forever. And we've been trying to go the route here in America of the individual chooses their order. They choose, their life. But we do have to keep the chaos at a certain level. And if it gets above that level, which it appears to be getting close to right now, everything breaks loose. And then what will happen is the people that do want order will snap back, and snap back hard as an overreaction to what has happened. And this is all pretty clear. It's all coming up, and the only way we can get through these things is to talk about it. The very idea of bringing up, there's plenty of rape classes or in colleges teaching men not to rape. That is bad. We can argue the validity of that or not. However, why aren't there similar classes on teaching women to use their sexuality responsibly? I'm pretty sure that those types of classes would be banned outright. That they need to actually, it's not just a party toy, your sex. It is also a responsibility. A very grave responsibility when you think about it, because that's how everybody gets here. And that's how we continue our species. That's how we continue living on through our ancestors. Just as like everyone that came before us is in a sense living on through us. Everything that they've done and built. I live in a house that was built, I think, in the 40s or the 50s. It's godforsaken old. But it does in a way connect me to those people then. Good and bad, because this is not a perfect house. But this is kind of rambly, and I just thought about that question, why postmodernism now? And those were just a couple of the ideas that I had floating around, not really coherent and not very organized. But I would certainly appreciate some feedback, and if you have some additional ideas that you'd like to add, or even a feedback on what I've said, if you have something to add, or if you think I misspoke at some point, just let me know. You have a good day. Bye.